What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Simple Songwriting Breakdowns. We got a song breakdown for y'all today. We're doing Linkin Park Two-Faced. We're actually going to do a couple Linkin Park episodes because their new album just came out, and it's actually pretty good. And there's a lot of really cool stuff on it that I want to talk about. So this is the first one. The first one since the album came out. We've already done, a few, but yeah, we're doing Two-Faced. This is a really cool song, and it's the latest single that they put out. They actually released it with a music video, which is a lot of fun. They're obviously having a lot of fun with this song, and just in general. So go check out the video. A lot of throwbacks to the 90s. It got like the Reservoir Dogs outfits on. I mean, it's just a suit, but you know what I mean. And then the camera angles and the concrete buildings and all that. It's cool. So yeah, a lot of good stuff to say about this album. If you haven't heard the full episode that Aubrey and I did, we released it on Monday. You should go and check that out to get like our full thoughts. But yeah, we're gonna be diving into a couple songs really in depth to talk about what they're doing and why it works. So let's jump in. So we've got Two-Faced here. It's a cool song. This song, it's another throwback, kind of similar to Heavy as the Crown. I don't think it's quite as good as Heavy as the Crown, and that's okay. Heavy as the Crown, I think, is like the crowning achievement of the album. No, it's a good song. But both of them are good songs. I think Heavy as the Crown is just a little bit better, but this one still does a lot of cool stuff that I want to talk about and dig into. So I think the very first thing we need to talk about with this song, even before we start listening to it, is the rhythm. So there is a rhythm throughout this whole song, the entire song, that never stops, and it's very cool. It's very interesting. And so, the guitar riffs are based on the rhythm, the drums are based on that rhythm, the vocals, even the vocals, like what Mike Shinoda and Emily Armstrong do, is based on that rhythm. And so the rhythm is essentially da 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 dum dum da 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 da. And so that dun da 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 da, that is the kind of pinnacle, that is the main motif of this song. And so let's listen. Let's start the song now, but I want to make it clear, like, that's going to be the main topic that we talk about today, is how they're able to take that one rhythm and extrapolate it into an entire song by, making slight changes to the notes, making changes to the, basically creating little variations on that rhythm in order to keep the song interesting and flowing for the entirety of the 3-minute runtime. So let's get the song started, and then we can dive a little more into each section and how it takes that rhythm and makes it work. So let's get the rhythm down first, and luckily they set it up right at the very beginning. So we're just gonna play the song now. That's overflow. Hold on. Here we go. So we got this synth coming in. It's pretty cool. Nice little synth. Eerie. And then that sound right there is actually, according to genius.com, it is background, or it is reversed vocals from Emily Armstrong saying, "I can't hear myself think." That little like that's what that is. So take another listen to that. Yeah, apparently that's her saying, "I can't hear myself think," which is cool. I think a big part of the lyrical theme of this song is kind of being confused and being backwards, and dealing with, manipulators and people who maybe don't have the best intentions for you, or just looking out for themselves, which is a pretty common theme in Linkin Park's music. It's always about, like, dealing with toxic people. So this is just another element of that. But here we go. The riff is going to come in, and so this is our first taste of the riff, or of the rhythm. I don't want to say riff because there's actually a lot of riffs in this song based on this rhythm, but this is the first version that we get. So here, take a listen. So dum 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 dum. So I really want to talk about the like dun, 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 dun. So that's like a four and it's not, it's actually not a four and it's like the four. So let me explain rhythms. So you have, you know, essentially four beats in your measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's what you're going to hear in most songs. So like I could count it out with this part real quick. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so it's not four and because it's actually like a 16th note, I think. So the way that so when you have your 1, 2, 3, 4, right, you can break that down into as many smaller pieces as you want. So if you know, for each of those beats, let's say you only play one note, it would sound like doom, dum, 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 because you're just playing one note per beat. If you played two notes per beat, it's dun, dum, bum, 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 like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then if you turn it into 16th notes, that means that you're playing 4 notes per beat, which sounds like 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So like what that riff actually is the second 16th note of the 4th beat. So it's like if you're thinking 1E and a, 2E and a, remember we're breaking 4 notes per each note per beat. Sorry, I'm getting all over the place. 4 notes per beat. That little riff happens on the second note of the 4th beat. So 1E and a, that's kind of how you count it, like 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. And so it would be that E, the 4E. So 1, 2, 3, 4E, 1, 2, 3, 4E. So that little pop there is very important to how this rhythm functions and why they're able to play it all throughout. So yeah, let's listen to that again and listen to how whenever I'm counting, that last note happens right after I say 4. It's like the 16th note after 4, which by the way, little music theory knowledge for you, 16th notes are a 16th note means that you're breaking it down into 4 notes per beat, because if you have 4 notes for every one of the 4 beats, you now have 16 total notes in that measure. So 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a, that means that's 16 notes right there. So when I say like, oh, it's a 16th note, like it's the second 16th note of the 4th beat, that's what that means. So let's listen again and listen to how that little note happens right after I say 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E. See how that works? So why is this so cool, or why is this so important actually? That little flip, we'll hear it when the drums come in actually, but what that little like extra note after the 4 does, that little like da-da, you know, it almost makes you want to like raise your head a little bit, or like, you know, da-da, like if you're bobbing your head down on each beat, like bob your head to the 1, 2, 3, 4, it actually, you know, if you bob your head down on the 4, it makes you want to like raise your head on the and then when the 1 comes back in, you want to come back down. I know that that's a weird way to think about it, like the motion of your head bob when you're bobbing with it, but that is a pretty simple way to explain what's happening with this rhythm. Essentially what I'm getting at is that little note being there actually sets up the one of the next measure. So essentially it allows you to drop back down on the 1 in the next measure, and it feels very intense and natural, I guess is the best way. Let's here. I'm getting ahead of myself. That'll be much easier to portray when we actually have the drums. So in fact, I'll play it with the drums real quick just so you can kind of hear what I'm talking about, but I'm not done talking about this clean part. Here. So even actually, we don't even need to get in the heavy part. Right there, it's perfect. Da-da-da-da-da-da-boom. So that guitar just goes da-da-da-da-da-da-boom. And so that da-da-da-da-da-da, it's the same thing. it's still ending on that 4E note, that second 16th note. And so it kind of like builds that tension on the right before the drop happens. So here, let's listen to that one more time. Like and it's funny because Emily Armstrong even does like an inhale, which, you know, it's again preparing you for that drop down on the first beat of the next measure, right? And so again, I come back to like the head bob motion. Like if you're bobbing your head to that riff, that da-na-na-na-na, like if you pause yourself right there while you're bobbing your head, it actually feels like you're about to, like, you're prepared and ready to drop back down. And same with like an inhale, you know, you don't inhale by leaning your head forward, you inhale by leaning your head back to allow your, you know, your diaphragm or whatever it's called to breathe in, right? So all of this is to say is that they are setting up, this riff constantly sets up the first beat of the next measure of the continuation of the riff, which is kind of what allows it to keep playing over and over and over again throughout this song. I want to really hammer this home because you're going to notice it, but it never feels like it's overstayed its welcome. It never feels like it's overplayed or that you're tired of listening to it throughout the song, just because it's a simple rhythmic trip. Like it's they're changing the riff and they're changing the structures of the song, but by keeping that little thing there, they can just keep doing the same rhythm over and over again to keep the energy up. Here, let's listen one more time. And again, like this time, just bob your head to it and kind of pause right before and like pay attention to yourself when you're actually when it right before it drops. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and boom. Oh, not yet. So I think I've hammered that home a little bit. It'll come up more throughout this song. I just think it's a very important thing to identify in terms of how this song works, because this is a very rhythmic song. It's very, it has a lot of movement. Like it makes you want to move, and you can even watch them in the video when they're singing to this song and playing to this song. They all are just bouncing up and down. You know, I think that is a very different style from Heavy as the Crown, which is a little more like epic and grand, whereas this song is very rhythmic, very like nu metal-esque. And it's rhythmic because of that little bounce, right? Or that little note at the end. So cool. Okay. With that said, we'll talk more about that as we get further into the song, and I'll probably keep pointing it out. I just think it's a very important thing to note. But let's actually talk about what's going on here. So let's take it back. So we've got this eerie synth with the backwards vocals. So then we get the guitar riff. Oh, hold on. So let's talk about these notes, because these are actually extremely interesting notes. They're very weird notes. So the doom, da da da, like that right there is actually a chromatic thing. For those of you, to explain to people who might not know as much about music, you have 12 notes in your scale, or in all of music, really. You have your A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp. Those are the 12 notes, and then you start again at A, right? So this song starts, this song is in the key of C sharp minor. You don't really need to know that necessarily to enjoy the song, but that's just what's happening theoretically. But what they do there is they actually do like a little chromatic thing where they start with a C sharp, that's the first note, the doom, and then they go C, D, C sharp, which those three notes are next to each other in the musical scale. And when you just play notes that are like all next to each other, it's considered chromatic. That's called chromatic note progression. It means that you're just hitting all of the notes. You're not necessarily, like your typical major or minor scale is a selection of notes out of those 12. Like your major scale is 7 notes, right? So most songs that you hear are going to be using either the major or the minor scale, both of which are 7 notes. I know I'm getting a little in the weeds on this, but essentially what I'm saying is that they are playing outside of a typical scale here. And it's pretty cool. It sounds very interesting. Then they're hitting a, you know, how can I explain this without getting too in the weeds? They are then hitting notes that are very, let me just leave it at that. They're hitting very unorthodox notes here, but it works really well. And I think that's why it sounds unique too. You know, they're a good band, and so they know what's up. Like, they know which notes to pick to make it sound unique without also, like, without making it sound weird or silly, right? So here's a better way for me to explain it. I can actually play you, I have the guitar tab pulled up, and it might be, I think it would be interesting to hear the notes played on like just a guitar tab thing. So that way you can hear how they sound without like off the record. So here, take a listen to this. So that right there, dun dun dun, like those are very strange notes to hit. And that's why it almost sounds a little goofy. Like chromatic stuff typically sounds kind of goofy. Like most circus music or clown music is chromatic, like da 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 da. You know, that's chromatic. But they use it in a way here that's actually very heavy and intense. So take another listen. So then we've got this next part right here. They play some other very unorthodox notes. Take a listen. That dun 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 dun. Those are, I'm not going to dive into it too deeply, but those, just understand those are not typical major minor scale notes. They're kind of weird, but they do sound very heavy and intense, which is, you know, props to them for managing to do that. Okay, so let's come back over. So we've got a lot of sounds building up, a lot of tension building. And it's because we're about to explode. And then again, she does that breathe in on the very last note in order to emphasize that like 4E thing that I was talking about, so that we can slam down into the drop here. And she does a really awesome scream here as well. So the guitars are basically doing just the standard, they're doing the same thing as before, but they're just doing full chord versions of it, and over heavy, with a heavy guitar tone. We also have Mr. Han, who actually plays a pretty big role in this song. He does a lot of fun stuff in this song. He's, you know, doing his typical wicka wicka. Actually, am I crazy? I could have sworn he was. I even have in my notes that he was doing stuff here. Did I just mishear it? Hold on. Nope, I'm crazy. He doesn't do anything here. That's okay. He has plenty of solos throughout the song. Cool. I'm trying to think. Oh, let's listen to the drums. Listen to the drums and listen to how they have like, how they emphasize that da na 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 da, that little last note there. Okay, sorry, I just made the connection that they're actually, this is the same drum rhythm that is played during the bridge of the song, which I actually had all my notes for that in the bridge. But I'll talk about it here because this is a really cool drum beat. This drum beat in particular is super interesting. So the snare drum is on the 1, the 2, and the 4. But then for the third beat, it's on like the 3 and. So listen to the snare drum here, the pop, pop. You hear that? So it's actually on the 3E, which I just think that's super cool because it kind of sets you up for the, it's like doing that da-da on the beat before it actually happens for the guitar riff. It's like he goes like kick, snare, snare, kick. So like do pop, pop, do. And on that pop, do, that's where he's doing the, where he's following the guitar riff. Here, take another listen. I'm getting all messed up. It's patu, patu, tupa, patu. And that's the kick drum, which is like your bass drum, the do do do. And then you have your snare drum, which is the one that pops, the pop pop pop. So yeah, it's a super interesting drum beat. I didn't realize that they did it here. I should have, my bad. But yeah, they I don't know if I've ever heard a drum beat quite like this. And I think it's a drum beat that would be really hard to pull off normally, but because they've got a guitar riff that complements it perfectly, and the drummer in general just knows what he's doing, it works really well. So yeah, here, let's listen one more time. And then we got a little on the drums leading into here. So now we get into the verse. So let's see. All right. So let's take a listen to this verse. The you know, we keep that clean guitar going. We go back to the clean guitar, which is still playing the same riff, but the drums are playing a softer version of the beat, which you know, keeps complementing that rhythm. Take a listen. If you can't hear the clean guitar, it's in the right speaker, while we've got the synth from the beginning playing in the left speaker. Last time I was hanging by a thread, trying to say I'm not, but I'm in it over my head. That's when I figured out where it led, beginning to so the drums have actually, so the drums are playing a they're actually hitting a hi-hat there, I believe. So let's listen for that hi-hat after the third snare hit. Hear that? I got my rhythm wrong a little bit. It's do 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 ba do do ba do do ba. A thread, trying to say I'm not, but I'm in it over my head. That's when I figured out where it led, beginning. Right there. Take a listen again. Beginning to real. Yeah, and listen to how it plays with the guitar riff. That's when I figured out where it led, beginning to real. Yeah, super cool, keeping it interesting. Yeah, I just think that's, I don't know. I love that they've taken that rhythm and used it on the whole song. It's something that you don't see too often. I mean, what you'll typically see is like on a rap song or something, you'll have the same exact beat playing for the whole song. And then there might be some musical changes behind it, but the drum beat, the beat itself is what changes. But here it's more of that they just created this rhythmic thing that they do, and then they just keep that up for the entire song. But the drum beats will change, the guitar riffs will change, the vocals will change, but they just never stopped doing that. So this song just keeps like it. I don't know. I just think that's really cool. It's tough to do, you know, keep a little motif like that. I think the only time I can, like, there's plenty of songs that only have one riff and keep that riff going throughout the whole song. Like you could look at something like Inner Sandman, right? With the da na 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 da na 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 na, you know, with the, and then at the end of the riff, it's like the da dun 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 da. Like they do that throughout the entire song as well. But I just like this. It's cool. It's always cool hearing something like this, and to know that they consciously did it. And then we haven't even gotten to the like parts where they actually changed the guitar riff around to still fit that little motif, that rhythmic motif, while allowing the song to have like a different sound or a different, you know, we'll get there with the guitars, but the guitar riff does change. The notes actually do change. So they were very conscientious of like, let's keep that going. And I think that that's maybe what I'm trying to drill here, is that they knew what they were doing. Like they very consciously said, ooh, I like that little like upbeat thing that we're doing on the fourth beat, that let's keep that going throughout the whole song. How can we like change the song to keep that going? And they find interesting ways to do that. All right. I have talked a lot about that. Let's get into some of the vocals here. So Mike Shinoda, isn't doing anything too crazy here. In fact, I think he's singing he's rapping very simply, in a very simple way, you know, in order to complement like the cool rhythmic stuff that's happening with the instruments. So take a listen. Last time I was hanging by a thread. Da na 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 na. So da 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 da, you know, trying to say I'm not, but I'm in it over my head, right? Like that's not too crazy rapping wise. It's pretty simple, but notice how he ends that head trying to say I'm not, but I'm in it over my head down. I think he ends that right on the fourth beat, which allows that little brown to play. This is something that I'll talk about in the pre-chorus as well. But again, they're very conscientious of that little rhythmic quirk that's happening in the song. So he knows that it's good for him to stop singing or rapping before that. So that way it's like, it still picks up in the listener's ear. So take a listen to him, like when he stops rapping versus the bow. I'm not 100% sure if he does it during the rap verse, but I know he does it during the pre-chorus. Let's listen. Last time I was hanging by a thread, trying to say. Yeah, so he does hang. Last time I was hanging by a thread. So he says thread, and then that little thing happens. Take a listen. I was hanging by a thread, trying to say I'm not, but I'm in it over my head. That's when I figured out where it led, beginning. Yeah, figured out where I led down. You know, that's when I figured out where it led down. So again, he knows that he's doing that, and that it just works really well. And it gives that little rhythmic quirk time to breathe and exist there to keep, so that way when he comes back in on the next line, like beginning to realize that you put me over the edge. It's like, it still keeps that momentum going. Like what I'm saying is that little rhythmic quirk, the whole point of it is to set up the next measure and make that drop down into the next measure more intense. And so that's why and they're doing that even on like the soft pre-chorus, right? Because he'll go, that's when I figured out where it led down, and then beginning to realize that you put me over the edge, like coming back down, because he starts singing right on the first beat, beginning to realize that you put me over the edge. It's like, because that down, everything drops down at that one part. So here, let me back it up just a little bit. That's when I figured out where it led, beginning to realize that you put me over the edge, where it led, beginning to realize that you. Oh, I'm sorry. He doesn't start saying beginning at the first beat. Where it led, beginning to realize that you put me over the edge. Yeah. Well, fair enough. So he's actually sounds like he's saying beginning on like the half beat before that measure. Hold on, let me back it up. That's when I figured out where it led, beginning to realize that you put me over the edge. Okay, yeah. Well, still, he does stop rapping during that down. So it's, that's when I figured out where it led down, beginning to realize that you put me over the edge down. So I know that sounds weird, me going like doing the rapping and then the down, but that's actually what's happening musically. He's purposefully not singing there in order to let that breathe. So then I think that's about everything during this verse. Oh, the lyrics. Last time I was hanging by a thread, trying to say I'm not, but I'm in it over my head. That's when I figured out where it led, beginning to realize that you put me over the edge. So these are okay. Like these, you know, it's funny because we've had conversations before on the show where we talk about how Linkin Park's lyrics, like, they're pretty open-ended. They're not necessarily like the type of lyrics that you really analyze hardcore. They're pretty like, you can interpret them a lot of different ways. I think this is a good example of that. It's nothing crazy. It's open to interpretation, but in general, I do think that the lyrical theme of this song is about the confusion that comes with dealing with people who are manipulating you. Essentially the whole idea of like people being two-faced. Again, that's a topic in a lot of Linkin Park songs, but this one is specifically about people who will play both sides, who will tell you something, who are playing both sides, but really are just looking out for themselves. So yeah, this song is kind of like becoming aware of that. So it makes sense that this first verse is, you know, it comes from a little bit of a confused protagonist or a confused speaker. You know, last time I was hanging by a thread trying to say I'm not, but I'm in it over my head. It's like, you know, after the last instance of whatever was happening with this, you know, two-faced person, he was hanging by a thread. You know, he just barely made it through that. And now he's saying, trying to say I'm not, but I'm in it over my head. It's like, you know, I don't want to believe it, or I'm trying to say I'm not in it, but I am in over my head here. That's when I figured out where it led, beginning to realize that you put me over the edge. It's like, after this new, like this time now that it's happening again, this whatever's happening, our character, our speaker is actually starting to realize maybe it was, you know, the two-faced person. Maybe that's who it is. Harvey Dent from Batman. No, I'm joking. Okay. Yeah. So he's starting to realize that it was this two-faced person that's manipulating him. So then we get into the pre-chorus here. Let's get it popping. We again have that little guitar lead in. You put me over the edge. The truth's not rigid. Your rules aren't fair. The dark's too vivid. The light's not there. All right, so this part is awesome. Yeah, this is again, they're really embracing that riff, that and they're emphasizing that. So actually, let me point something out guitar wise on that. They are playing, obviously they're playing higher notes. They're going from like but they're actually going from playing like full power chords. You know, that's that chunky sound, the to on that note playing octaves, which for those of you who don't know, an octave is essentially like if you play two notes that are octaves of each other, that means that you're playing the same note. In this case, it is an E note, I believe. No, it's a D note. Is it a D? Yeah, it's a D note, but they're playing D in a lower octave and then a D note just in the higher octave. So they're playing two D notes, but one's lower and one's higher. So that's why it has that down. It sounds a little smoother. It pierces a little bit more. It's less distorted because the notes are harmonizing with each other perfectly, because that's what octaves do. Versus the chunky guitar riffs, those are power chords. For example, they're still playing a D note on one of the chords, but they're also playing an A note as well. So you'll be playing a power chord is essentially two notes played at the same time, which those two notes aren't going to harmonize as perfectly as octaves will. And that dissonance, that slight dissonance between the two notes is what creates a distorted sound when you put those two notes through a distorted guitar amp. So that's why it sounds chunky on the power chord sections. And then for that one note down, it sounds like it's piercing through a little bit better. So take a listen and just, again, pay attention to the chunkiness versus the kind of smooth piercingness of that one note. Realize that you put me over the edge. The truth's not rigid. Your rules aren't fair. Hear that? Now. Which again, very smart choice, because they could have just done a power chord on that note, you know, but by turning it into an octave, it just sticks out a little bit more and emphasizes that little rhythmic quirk that we've been talking about. So yeah, then the next thing I want to talk about on the guitar is that they're doing a really interesting mix thing here. And I was kind of going back and forth when I was making my notes for this song. I can't tell if it's one guitar or two. I'm almost certain that it's two guitars, but they are mixed in the center. And what I mean by that is when you're mixing music, you have your stereo spectrum of sound, meaning you can put something in the left headphone or the right headphone, or you can have it kind of in the middle. So like usually you have your vocals and your snare drum and kick drum in the middle. And then like your guitars will be to the left or the right. So for example, like I'm going to fast forward just a little bit to this like really small bridge here before the chorus. listen, just so you can fully understand. It would be hard to tell this unless you're listening on headphones, but you'll hear this little guitar part, the na 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 na, go from the right speaker and then move over to the center and then kind of to the left towards the end. So listen to this guitar here. So that na 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 na, like if you just pay attention to that guitar part there, you'll hear it actually move from your right headphone to the center and then at the very end over to the left headphone. So that's what I mean by stereo spectrum and panning. So you'll have usually when you are creating like a really big rock sound, what you're doing is you're going to record the same guitar part like twice and put one in the left speaker and one in the right speaker. So that's what's happening on something like this right here. Like the vocals are in the middle and then you got one guitar riff in the left, one guitar riff in the right. So check this out. So like that mix in particular, you have your snare and kick in the middle. You've got, various cymbals and toms off to the left and the right. And then you've got your guitar panned all the way to the left, like one recording of the riff panned to the left. Sorry, one recording of the riff panned to the left, and then a second recording of the riff panned to the right. They might have even tracked it 4 times and just done 2 recordings in the left and 2 recordings in the right. It's always kind of tricky for me to tell that. I think they did here though, because it still sounds a little full, even just in the left and the right. But I don't know. It's always tough for me to tell that just by hearing it. But yeah, that's what you're hearing here though, with the vocals in the middle. So they sound like they're right in front of you. So here, take a listen again. So with all of that said, what I was getting at is during this pre-chorus, the guitar is actually in the middle, but it sounds like they recorded it twice and put 2 recordings in the middle, but just turned one of them down to like a very quiet volume so that you still get like the little, it still sounds thick and full, but it also really only sounds like you're listening to one guitar. So listen to the guitar in the middle here. Over the edge, truth's not rigid, your rules aren't fair, the dark's too vivid, the light's not there, I start to give in, but I can't bear to put... Like, it's a very interesting mix because it's the same riff as what's going on here, but listen to how different it sounds. That versus your rules aren't fair, the dark's too vivid, the light's not there, I start to give in. Now obviously it's louder on the intro riff, it's a little bit quieter during that pre-chorus, but still it sounds cool though. It sounds like that's just the power of like creating a solid mix and like what mixing can do for your song, because they still have those riffs playing, and I think it is 2 recordings of the riff, but just by mixing it a little bit differently and like audio engineering it doesn't sound like we're at full throttle yet. We're building tension, So yeah, the drums stay pretty much the same, or moving on from the guitars, the drums stay pretty much the same during this pre-chorus. That's actually that's the same drum beat as this. I think the only difference is maybe the hi-hat. They've got it open on the pre-chorus. Let me listen. Ooh, they might be hitting the hi-hat more times actually. Yeah, so the hi-hat sounds, just so you guys know, the hi-hat is the cymbal on the drums that is, it's next to the snare, and you actually have a foot pedal that can either open or close it. It's the one that looks like a flying saucer, like a UFO that's really small, and it's like so yeah, it sounds like they're hitting the hi-hat a little bit harder and maybe have it open a little bit on this pre-chorus. But other than that, the drum beat sounds about the same. Then we get Mike Shinoda, which again, this is very simple. Like rhythmically, your truth's not rigid, your rules aren't fair. You know, rhythmically, it's da 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 da. Like that's nothing crazy rhythmically, but it just works so well with that like bouncy nature of this song. Like, you know, again, go watch the music video and see how they're kind of moving their bodies, and like that's the vibe of this song, and it's just great the way that they can capture that so well. Yeah, I do think, and then I do want to point out, like, I was a little unsure about the verse, but I know for a fact in the pre-chorus when he says your rules aren't fair, right after he says fair, like that's on the fourth beat. So that E, that 4E note, you know, happens. So it's like your rules aren't fair. Nah. So take a listen to that. Beginning to realize that you put me over the edge. The truth's not rigid. Your rules aren't fair. The dark's too vivid. The light's not there. So that's an instance where he was very clearly leaving that open. Like they wanted to emphasize that rhythmic quirk some more on this pre-chorus. So yeah, very cool. You know, so he does your truth's not rigid, your rules aren't fair, the dark's too vivid, the light's not there. I start to give in, or here, I start to give in, but I can't bear. But then he switches it up on this fourth one to kind of build the tension. To put it all behind, I run into it blind like. I also want to note Mike Shinoda is like a genius when it comes to layering and mixing his rapping vocals and like having a double recording on certain words to emphasize them. So he's doing that here on like, you know, not rigid, your rules aren't fair. Like listen to those last words of the line and you'll hear that doubled vocal. Realize that you put me over the edge. The truth's not rigid, your rules aren't fair. The dark's too vivid. Oh, actually he's doing, okay, so sorry. He's doing it on your truth's not rigid. He doubles that whole line and then he does a single recording for it. Your rules aren't fair. The dark's too vivid, double there. The light's not there. So take a listen to that. Beginning to realize that you put me over the edge. The truth's not rigid. Your single. Rules aren't fair. The dark's too vivid. The light's not there. I start to give in, but I can't bear to put it all behind. I run into it blind like. Yeah, and then he doubles the whole line that says to put it all behind. I run into it blind. I run into it blind. Yeah, he's just great at that. I don't think he does anything too crazy on this song because I do think this song is meant to be a little more natural sounding and a little more energetic. Like they're just playing, like it's supposed to sound like you're listening to them at a show, right? Whereas other songs, you know, like Heavy as the Crown, for example, there's a lot of production polish on the vocals and on the lyrics in order to make them sound interesting. And I'm talking about like the little glitches and the sounds that you'll hear in his voice. You know, think back to In the End, whenever, I can't think of a specific instance, but all throughout those verses on In the End, it's like his voice, you know, that little glitch, you know. So anyway, I think that's about it. We covered the drums, the bass. I do think the bass, I mean, the bass is just following the guitars, but I do think there's a really thick bass here. Let's listen to the bass tone. Yeah, we got a super thick bass tone, and maybe that's what I'm like. I think that might be one of the reasons why I was having trouble telling if there was a single guitar recording or two guitar recordings in that verse, because the bass is typically mixed in the middle as well. So I think I was having trouble telling, is it the bass and the guitar playing, or is it the bass and then two guitar recordings playing? So 3 recordings. I do think it's 2 guitars and a bass, but again, it's hard to tell when they're all mixed in the middle. So anyway, all right, I think we've got just a little bit of, I think there's like a little drum fill here. Let's listen. Light's not there, I start to give in, but I can't bear to put it all behind. I run into it blind like, you know, then we get this little pre-chorus. I wouldn't call this a pre-chorus, actually. This is like a little pre-chorus bridge, where you have the drums mixed with a filter, and they're only in the left speaker, they're only in your left ear, and then you have a guitar that starts in the right and then pans over to the left right as the chorus comes in. So listen to the drums in the left and then the guitar in the right. And we'll play it twice so you can hear that. Hear that? And so what's interesting about that is because it starts off with just, you know, drums in left, guitar in right, but then as the guitar moves over to the left, they have little sounds and like ambient noise filling up the full stereo spectrum, so it doesn't sound like your right ear is just left out to dry, you know, like there's nothing happening in the right speaker. By the time the guitar gets over to the left, there's plenty of noise happening in both speakers to fill the space up. So listen to that one more time and just listen to how that noise fills up the space on the right side of the stereo spectrum. Hear that? So, but yeah, that's a cool little bridge that they've done, that they do there. I think, I'm just going to talk about this now just so we can knock this little bridge out. I knew that they only did this bridge here on this one part, but what I didn't know until I really started diving into the song is that during the second pre-chorus, they don't have this bridge as a separate section. They actually put this at the end of Mike's, so they add it as a part of the pre-chorus in the second pre-chorus. So here, listen to this right here. You'll hear it start to play while Mike is singing. This is the second pre-chorus, and when he says, "To put it all behind, I run into it blind," like that's when that pre-chorus section starts to play. Start to give in, but I can't bear to put it all behind, I run into it blind, like. You hear that? So you get that same, you know, the same sounds, but instead of creating a whole new section for it like they did on the first pre-chorus, or on the first part of the song, they actually added into the pre-chorus section where Mike is rapping. So yeah. I run into it blind, Mike. So yeah, like that's the first one, and then here's the second one. The dark's too, I run into it blind, like, but I can't bear to put it all behind, I run into it blind, like. So the reason I want to note this is that something I've talked about as we've been talking about Linkin Park songs is that they're very economical with what they use. So like, for example, Heavy as the Crown, you know, they have a pre-chorus on the first part of the song, but then the second part, it goes straight from verse to chorus, but then they actually put the pre-chorus vocals as the bridge after the second chorus, which is the, what's the exact line? I'm tired of explaining, you know, because I'm tired of explaining what the joke is, that part right there. You know, they wrote that and then they didn't have a full pre-chorus on the second one, but then they just make it a bridge. So I'm bringing this up because they're not wasting anything. Like they've got this guitar riff, this little thing that they wrote that na 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 na, and it's like, it's cool and it sounds good. And they're thinking, well, how can we how can we use this twice? So not only do they, you know, use it twice, but by switching up the way that they use it, they make the second pre-chorus sound different and distinct from the first one. And they change the structure up, but they also don't let that section go to waste. They use it twice throughout the song in a good way. So it's like a two-pronged approach. They on one hand, they don't just write a section and use it once and then never use it again, which is a little bit of a waste if you're going to write something, like unless it's a guitar solo or whatever. You typically want to try to use, you know, the stuff that you write throughout the song as much as possible. But then, so they don't waste that section by only using it once, but then because they use it a little differently the second time, they allow the second part of the song to have a little bit of flavor and be different from the first part. So again, they didn't need to do any of this, but it's just smart that they did. And they were obviously thinking like, how can we be creative here? How can we, you know, switch things up and do something different? So love that. Yeah, I think that's about it on that. I think I just wanted to point that out. All right, so let's get into the chorus. I'm just going to play a little bit of it real quick. All right. So let's just pause there. So a few things. Let's talk about Emily Armstrong first. She sounds great here, by the way. Like, she just sounds killer. She's got a small lower volume harmony, a lower harmony, which also, sorry. She is singing a lower harmony, which is also kind of low in volume, you know, underneath her lead. So listen for that, you know, her two vocals singing here. Caught in the middle, like underneath there. Yeah, so she's got that extra little harmony singing with her. She's actually matching the rhythm. Down, 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 da, 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 down. Two-faced, caught in the middle. So that middle kind of matches that little rhythmic quirk we've been talking about. So she's fitting along with it perfectly. Whereas Mike was kind of singing around, or just not singing at all. He was more singing like around the rhythm. She is matching the rhythm perfectly, which is cool. Like, that's totally fine. Again, we're just emphasizing, you know, what we've got. Yeah, and then she does kind of go and do her own thing here on this section. Right here. So again, that's kind of a pretty normal thing to do in a chorus, where like you follow the same rhythm twice. It's an AABA structure. So two-phase, caught in the middle, caught in the middle. Too late, counting to zero, and then for the third, you know, repetition, you kind of sing something a little different. You should have recognized it's too late for choosing sides. Two-face, caught in the middle. So yeah, again, rhythmically AABA, lyrically ABCA. Fun little fact. Anyway, so and then at the very end, she does a little chanted two-face. A little two-faced, which that's cool. That's always you know, this song, again, like I mentioned earlier, this is meant to be a little more fun than like Heavy as the Crown. This is more energetic, more fun. So having that two-face, like, that's something that would definitely play well live. So yeah. Oh, and then she just repeats two-faced a few times, or caught in the middle a few times there. Yeah, she repeats it once, actually. Two-face, caught in the middle, two-face. Yeah, so that's all cool. She sounds good. So then the next thing I want to talk about with this chorus, and this was actually something that I picked up on just listening to it, was I noticed that you know, that note that I was talking about, that little rhythmic note, that down, you know, down, 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 down. I was like, that doesn't sound like the same note as what I've been hearing in the other parts of the song. I actually picked up on that before, like, looking at the guitar tabs. So listen for that, you know, down, da, 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 da. Listen for it here. That boom, boom, down, da, 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 down. So I went and looked at the tab, which I've got pulled up, and I was right. So they changed the note here in order to match whatever chord they're playing. So check it out. I'm going to play the guitar tab now. Oh, crap, I forgot to mute that. Hope it's not too loud. You know, down, da, da, da. So a few things. First off, they're doing the octaves on the second note. This, you know, it goes down, boom. So those are octaves again, which is why they stick out. But then on that little rhythmic note, the da 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 down. So they actually are changing that to match the chords, or to create a chord progression, essentially. This is important because you want your chords to change when you have like a melodic singer singing over it. So that way you can actually have, you know, movement throughout the part. If you just keep the same chords playing over and over again, sorry, if you keep the same notes playing over and over again, it's tough for a singer to sound different, because you have to, like, if the singer tries to sing different notes, then it's going to clash if you have the same chord playing. So it makes sense that they would change the part to actually create a chord progression here, or a progression of notes. So that way Emily can actually sing different notes and it can match her melody that she's singing. So this riff is distinctly different from the riff that we've been hearing throughout this song. So like, listen to the difference between this. You know, that allows her to do that caught in the middle, right? Like, she can't do that over something like this, like caught in the middle, like that clashes. But then over here, caught in the middle, like that works. Regardless though, this riff is very different from this riff. Very different riffs. So this is what I was getting at when I said, you know, I want to talk about the rhythm that they're doing rather than the riff itself, because the riff is going to change, and it changes more throughout the song as well. With all of that said, I don't think there's any other guitar parts playing here. Let's listen real quick. I'm pretty sure there's not. So unlike something like Heavy as the Crown, where they'll have like rhythm guitars and then octave guitars and like lots of layers, this is pretty straightforward. This is just the guitar riffs, the bass, the drums, and then her singing. And Mike probably sings this with her. He probably does that lower octave or lower harmony live. So no crazy fancy production happening here. This is very straightforward, like rock and roll. Yeah, so fun stuff, very energetic, again, like very natural sounding, very lively. And yeah, they're just hammering home on that rhythm, you know, caught in the middle, like that middle is the note that hits it. So if you were totally unsure about what I was talking about, just sing the chorus and pay attention to how she says caught in the middle and count into 0, because that little rhythmic quirk is what allows her to say those, you know, last words quickly, and it works. You know, two-faced, caught in the middle, like that's you as the listener, you know, participating in that rhythm with the band. So fun stuff. I think that's everything for the chorus. Again, it's, you know, nothing too crazy happening here. Again, they're just sticking on that rhythm. Oh, let me listen to the drums, because I was kind of off on the drums with the, I think that intro threw me off a little bit, because I thought that those were just during the bridge, or the heavy breakdown in the bridge. I didn't realize that they did that drum beat there. So let me pay attention to the drums here. They're doing the same beat there. Damn, I really just wasn't paying attention to the drums until we got to the bridge. Yeah, so again, that beat is really cool. Batu, batu, dupa. Cool beat, very intense, fun stuff. Yeah, here, listen again. Is the snare hitting on the one? Am I crazy? It's not there. It's hitting on the 1E, and then it hits on the 2, and then 3E, and then it hits on the 4. Does it do that on the other parts? Hold on. Let me listen to this real quick. going crazy. I swear he's hitting the snare on what I'm trying to figure out is he hitting the snare on the very first beat of the measure? And it sounds like he might be doing it on some measures. So like right when the drums come in, try to pay attention if he hits a snare first. So he definitely didn't hit it there. It's definitely like kick and then snare right when it comes in. But let's listen for the second repetition of the riff. No, he's not. He's doing that. It's kick snare and then snare kick. So do pop pop do. That's crazy. Okay, hold on. We're gonna fast forward to the bridge real quick because now I'm like really curious, or to the breakdown. I'm gonna fast forward there. We'll get to the breakdown separately, but I have to know now. Stop yelling at me! All right, I was off. Yeah, so it's kick snare snare kick snare snare kick. Do pop pop do pop pop do. Cool. Yeah, damn. Well, you can tell that I'm a guitarist, not a drummer. So yeah, yeah. And at least I caught the others. And to be fair, you know what? I'm not even going to make excuses. She's just stop listening to the podcast now. No. All right, cool. Let's keep going. So we just finished the first chorus. So we're going to come back. Oh, actually, we're not done with the chorus. Let's talk about the lyrics. So she's saying, two-faced, caught in the middle, two-faced, counting to zero. You should have recognized it's too late for choosing sides. Two-faced, caught in the middle, two-faced. So yeah, I think, again, this song is about realizing that somebody is being two-faced with you and like catching them in the act. Like what they're saying is not true. Actually, you know what? We didn't even talk about the lyrics in the pre-chorus because I think the pre-chorus sets this in a little more. Let's talk about the lyrics. So your truth's not rigid. Your rules aren't fair. The dark's too vivid. The light's not there. I start to give in, but I can't bear to put it all behind. I run into it blind. Like, so I really like these lyrics and the way that he sings them. So your truth's not rigid, your rules aren't fair. So essentially what he's saying, like, this is what it feels like when you're dealing with somebody who lies and manipulates like what they say to be true or what they, claim is their like moral code or their moral truth. It's not rigid. It's not, which is what truth is supposed to be, right? Like truth is truth. There is only truth. There's no flexible truth. So the fact that they like, he's calling them out. He's like, your truth isn't rigid. Your rules aren't fair. Like the rules that you're imposing on people, it's ridiculous. This line is really cool. The dark's too vivid. The light's not there. It's almost like, the chaos and the darkness that you've created, it's too apparent. Like you can't, like there's nothing there. There's no light. Like the darkness is so vivid. Like it's an interesting case, kind of like what's it called? Onomatopoeia, is that right? Like jumbo shrimp, where the words conflict. Like the dark's too vivid. Like vivid means that you can clearly see something, but then dark is, obviously the opposite of that. So it's an interesting take on like your darkness is too vivid to me, and I can see that there's no light in there. I start to give in, but I can't bear. That's again, like I start to follow along with you, but I can't, I can't stand it. And then I can't bear to put it all behind. I run into it blind. Like, so yeah, like I can't bear to put it all behind. And again, all of this is open to interpretation. I'm kind of just interpreting it on the fly, but the way that I would see it is like, I can't bear to ignore all of the other shit that you've, claimed or what you've said. So like, your truth's not rigid, rules not fair, dark's too vivid, life, the light's not there. I can't bear to ignore all of that. Like it's too much. So I'm going to run into this situation a little blind, which, if you're dealing with toxic people, that's one of the most frustrating parts, is that a lot of times you can't definitively prove that what they're saying is a lie, or because that's what, you know, liars do actually, is they tell half truths. They tell like a, you know, an exaggerated version of the truth, right? Like, oh, I didn't you know, hey, I'm sorry, I took like $15 out of your wallet, but then in reality they actually snagged the 100 or something like that. You know, that's kind of what liars do. They know how to manipulate and how to like weasel their way out of getting, you know, the full out of the consequences of their actions, and they typically do it by minimizing the thing that they did. You know, it's like a child is the one that will say, oh, I didn't put my hand in the cookie jar, meanwhile there's like 5 cookies missing. But then like a more intelligent liar will say, yeah, I took 2 cookies. And it's like, well, why are 5 cookies missing? Oh, I don't know why 5 cookies are missing. Like that wasn't me, I only took 2. And it's like, okay, you know, that's more believable, and you're more likely to get away with that because, and then they're the ones that would say, oh, my you know, my brother took 3 cookies, or, you know, your friend took 3 cookies, it wasn't me. In fact, they took 3 cookies and I only took 2, so you're really mad at them. Like that's manipulation. That's what manipulation looks like. So I think that's what that line, I run into it blind, like that. I think that's how I would interpret that. But again, I mean, interpret it how you would like. But usually once you're dealing with people who lie and enough of those lies stack up, you start to piece it all together, and you're like, yeah, uh, I'm not following anymore. Like you're losing me, you know? So, and then we get into the chorus where it's like two-faced caught in the middle. Like there it is. Like you're being two-faced, you're lying, you're playing games, and we've caught you. Too late counting to zero, or count into zero. um I'm not really sure what that line means specifically. I think that's just one of those lines that's like, you can interpret that how you want. Maybe it's a call out to the name of the album from Zero. I don't know. You should have recognized it's too late for choosing sides. Yeah, that's basically saying like, you know, you had your chance to be real and to, you know, pick who your real ally was, but now you've been caught and it's too late. So, and one thing that I do want to say real quick before we move on is that when it comes to these types of songs, I think that it is very much possible to address like a serious topic in a fun song. I think Aubrey and I have briefly touched on this before, on like, you know, I hate to keep harping on something like Women's World, right? But I think it's just such a good example. I'll try to find some other examples. But basically it's like you can have a fun song that is crowd pleasing and enjoyable, and still make it about a topic that is worthwhile and meaningful and interesting, right? Like you can, that is very much a doable thing. Like to me, this song is, you know, we use that word and I hate it, but I'm going to use it, the vibe word. This song is definitely a vibe. Like it's got this bounce to it that's really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. It's fun. This is not like a technical masterpiece song. Like this isn't like some grand epic or anything. It's just a fun song. But you can address a serious topic or something worthwhile in a serious song, or in a fun, you know, vibey song. And this is a good example of that. Like everybody's dealt with people like this in their life. They're very frustrating people to deal with because again, like on one hand, you pretty, you know, most people go into a relationship with somebody, not like boyfriend girlfriend relationship, but just a regular interhuman relationship, right? Like a friend or a coworker or something. You go into it thinking the best. Like you want to believe like, yes, this person is a good person, or in general they're going to tell the truth, and that's like the appropriate way to do things. Or maybe I think the best way to go into meeting somebody new is to be open to like, okay, this person could be a liar, could be whatever. Like give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove you wrong, type of thing. But don't ever leave out the possibility that they're lying or manipulating the situation. Like I think that's probably the smartest way to do it. But again, in general, you are going to believe that the people that you deal with have good intentions and are not going to manipulate you, right? That's kind of the standard. But when you start to get this like, you know, overwhelming unignorable evidence. Like the lies just start to add up, or the stories that they tell just don't quite make sense and it's not quite fitting. I think that that's when you have to really like, I think that's something that everybody goes through at some point in their lives, like realizing that, oh man, like this person, like this friend that I had, I don't think that they're actually like, I don't think that they actually are, they might not, I don't think that they have my best interests at heart, or I think that they might be manipulating me, or they might not be a good person. Like that's something I think everyone goes through, and it's kind of a jarring experience, especially when it's like a friend, right? Or somebody that you care about. It's like, oh, this family member just manipulated me. Like it's kind of shitty. You know what I mean? So all of this is to say, this is a cool topic. It's a good topic to talk about, and you can do it in a song that is still very much a fun song. Like I think this is a fun song, and it's an exciting song, and I think that that's evidence. I'll talk about it later, but it's the little talking that they do at the end of the song and the music video in general. Like this is not a song that's meant to be taken too seriously, but you can still talk about something substantive and interesting. So cool. I think that's everything I wanted to say about that. So let's go into the second verse. So we go straight from the straight from the first chorus into the second verse. So let's just listen to that transition, but it's pretty quick. That is the pre-chorus, Cameron. Hold on. Here. Last time you told me it wasn't true. So the only thing that I wanted to note there, which is something I love, is the drums start on the snare, which is on like the second beat. So listen to how there's no drums, and then Mike even starts rapping, last time, he says, last time you, and then the drums come in. Check it out. Hold on, sorry. Yeah, on that you, last time you, that he says it on like the second beat, last time you, and the snare hits on the second beat. And so yeah, listen one more time. Last time you told me it wasn't true, and point. He might not sing that you on the exact second beat, but regardless, the drums come in on the second beat. It's a cool little transition. It's like a tiny little mini break from the energy, like literally 1 second of a break before we pick it back up. Last time you told me it wasn't true, and pointing every finger. So yeah, just cool. Again, that's the type of thing that they had to very specifically, like, they consciously decided to do that. And I like pointing stuff like that out because I don't think that the average listener would have ever noticed that. Like they wouldn't have noticed that the drums don't play for the first 2 beats of that song, of that section, but the musicians do. The musicians go out of their way to do it, and it serves a couple of purposes. One, it's just interesting, having the verse start with no drums. It allows a little bit of a breath from the intensity of the chorus. Like you go two-faced, and then we come in. You just get that tiny little section to take a breath. Yeah, it's just good pointing stuff like that out so you can appreciate, when it happens and all of that jazz. So let's keep going. I don't think there's any other changes in the chorus or in the verse. Things that you didn't do, so that's why I kept missing the clues and never. Oh, actually, little Mr. Han. Did he do that in the first verse? Hold on. I was hanging by a thread, trying to say I'm not, but I'm in it over my head. That's when I figured out where it led. Beginning. I kept missing the clues and never realized that the one that did it was you. And point. Last time you told me it wasn't true, and pointing every finger with things that you didn't do. So that's not Mr. Han. Sorry. That's the scratches of the guitar, of him playing the guitar. That's really cool that they kept that in. So essentially, listen and you'll hear that little, like, it sounds like a little, like a disc scratch. Like it's very high pitched, like scratching sound, but it's actually the guitar. It's his fingers moving on the guitar strings, which gives it this like scraping sound, which sounds like you know, a little Mr. Han wicka wiki stuff, but it's just the sound of the strings and him playing the guitar strings. That's really cool. They kept that. Again, it gives it that natural, live, very active sound. So take a listen and listen for that scratching.
Last time you told me it wasn't true and pointing every finger with things that you didn't do. So that's why I kept.
There is a little Mr. Han there in the left ear. There it is. A little wicka wicka. Here.
That's why I kept.
Hear that? Wicka wicka over in the left. One more time.
Didn't do. So that's why I kept missing the
There he is. I swear, does he do that in the first one? Hold on.
time I was hanging by a thread, trying to say I'm not, but I'm in it over my head. That's when I figured out where it led, beginning to realize that you put me over the edge.
He does not do it there. He only does it in the second one. Okay, cool. I'm glad I actually took a little. I'm glad I came and listened to the second verse, because I even had in my notes that they're the same. That's really funny. Maybe that's what I heard the first time I listened, and then I caught the strings of the guitar, and then listening again, I heard the, you know, little wicka wiki from Mr. Han. So the disc scratches. So that's really cool. Okay, then we get into the pre-chorus though. I didn't hear anything else different. Let's do this pre-chorus real quick.
The one that did it was you. The truth's not rigid, the rules aren't fair. The dark's too vivid, the light's not there. I start to give in, but I can't.
And then we got that little different section here, right here.
To put it all behind, I run into it blind like.
Yeah, so cool stuff. Nothing too crazy. Let's talk about the lyrics real quick. The pre-chorus is the same, but the second verse, last time you told me it wasn't true and pointing every finger at things that you didn't do. So that's why I kept missing the clues and never realized that the one that did it was you. So again, he's talking about last time, because remember in the first verse, he says, last time I was hanging by a thread. This time he's saying, or in the second verse, he's saying, last time you told me it wasn't true and pointing every finger at things that you didn't do. That's a really clever line, actually. I actually like that, because, you know, it's an interesting thing to say, like you're pointing the finger at things that you didn't do, right? Like, so implying like he's blaming all of these other people and talking shit about these other people for things that they did. And like you're, imagine blaming somebody else for something that you didn't do, that they did. It's like, I don't know. It's like the implication is that, you know, most people just kind of live their lives. They don't go out of their way to like point out all of the other things that people do. And it's like, look, that person did that. That person did. It's kind of like what I was talking about with the cookie jar metaphor or example earlier, where it's like, you know, most people would just say, oh, imagine that if it was true, like you only ate 2 cookies out of the cookie jar and then somebody else ate 3. It's like, you probably would just say, look, I don't know what anybody else did. I just took 2 cookies. Like, I shouldn't have done that, and I'm sorry. Whereas the liars are the ones who are typically pointing the fingers like, well, yeah, I took 2 cookies, but they took 3. You should look at them. They took 3. They took the most. They're the bad guys. Like, that's typically how it goes. But so it's just interesting. And I mean, I think it could be interpreted a few different ways, but yeah, and pointing every finger at things that you didn't do. And then, you know, he continues by saying, so that's why I kept missing the clues and never realized that the one that did it was you. It's like, I kept, you know, because you were pointing around, you know, you were confusing the situation. I didn't realize that you're the one that stole all 5 cookies out of the cookie jar. So, oh, that's all right. Hold on. Let me drink some water real quick. All right, we got our metaphor. That's what this song is about. It's about stealing cookies out of a cookie jar. All right, pre-chorus is the same. The second chorus is the same. So we're just going to skip those. We're going to go straight to the bridge. So the bridge is essentially the first time, other than that small little guitar part in the, you know, that na 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 na. The bridge is the first time we get a completely new guitar section. So let's listen for that riff. Whoops, hold on. Here we go. So there's actually a lot going on here funnily enough. There is, okay, so on one hand, we've got the guitar going dum dum da dum dum. And I think it's actually better to hear this guitar riff on the tab. Let's listen to that real quick. Because it's a, I wouldn't have thought that this was how this riff was played until I hear it. So check this out. Kind of a interesting, like those are the notes that are being played. Because to me it almost sounded like it was going like dum dun 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 dun, but I think that's just the drums, you know, kind of clouding things up. Take a listen again.
I can't hear myself think. I can't hear myself think.
Like I honestly, the first time I heard it as dum dun 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 dum, but that's just the drums in the background, which is the second element I wanted to talk about. There's some really cool percussion happening. It sounds like it's just like toms, maybe a filtered snare. Linkin Park on this album are doing so many cool things with the drums. I feel like every single song I talk about, like I'm talking about some filtered drums or drums that are only in the left speaker or, you know, whatever, like just all these crazy things that they're doing with the drums, which is very unique. Most people would never touch the mix of the drums or like do weird stuff with the drums. So here, listen to the percussion.
I can't hear myself think. I can't hear myself think.
Yeah, I
can't hear myself think. I can't hear myself think. I can't hear myself think.
Yeah, so cool little synth there over the guitar. Then you have in the background, we're gonna get to Emily, but we have in the background a single note synth. I think it's hitting like a ooh, that note, like doo, like up an octave, and it's just building tension. Listen for that.
I can't hear myself think. I can't hear myself think. I can't hear myself think.
Pretty cool little ooh in the background there. Yeah, I what am I trying to, like again, that little underlying note there, I'm not sure which note that is. Let me see. I should be able to find it real quick. Hold on. I'm gonna grab my guitar. Hold on. We're gonna find it. So yeah, okay. That's just the root note. Yeah, it's just the root note. It's a C sharp, but remember this whole song is in C sharp minor. But so it's just the C sharp note, but still it's cool just having that note there, like building that tension a little bit. Then we have Emily. So this is obviously, this is like the main part of this section is Emily. I'll be honest, this is probably the only section that I don't really like. I think that the, you know, can't hear myself think. It's a little on the nose. It's just a little cliche for me, but that's okay. It's not a deal breaker. Like I think the point I'm making is I think it could have been something a little better, a little more unique, but that's it doesn't kill it for me. It's just I feel like I've heard a lot of songs that say things like that, you know. So anyway, and then I think the way that she sings it too, like the specific notes that she sings, I'm not going to try to figure out all of the notes, but there's like one time in particular where she over exaggerates it a little bit, like I can't hear myself think, you know. It's like, all right, come on.
I can't hear myself think.
Like that's okay. That's a cool way to say it. So just to be clear, so that y'all understand, like you actually like hit notes when you're talking, like actual notes. Like even look at what I just did. I did like hit notes when you're talking. Like if you looked at like the way that I talk, I'm actually talking in a key, and the way that I said those notes, I built up the tension. Da 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 da. You know, hit notes when you're talking. And so when you actually sound like you've completed a sentence or completed a thought, you actually resolve back to your root note. I don't think that that's something that gets talked about enough by people. But yeah, like when you make a point, like if you ask a question, like, or if you ask a question, you know, dun 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 dun, you know, and then you get an answer. Da da na 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 na. like that actually resolves back down. So like I'm talking in a key right now, and you could probably figure out what key that is and what notes I'm hitting. And then when I finally, like when I finish this sentence, I'm going to resolve my point, and that is my point. My point is now made. And hear that made sounds very like it's concluded, it's all done. My point is made. So all of this is to say that even though she's just saying, I can't hear myself think, like she's still hitting musical notes, and those notes affect the way that the part is perceived. So I think the first time she says it, it sounds a bit more serious to me. It sounds, a bit stronger because she's hitting more subdued notes. But then she says it, she uses notes that I think are a little corny. Like, take a listen. That's the first time. I can't hear myself think. I can't hear myself think. That right there, that third one, I can't hear myself think. That's a little, I think that's where she loses me. That's a little corny. The second one, it sounds like she just increases like one of the notes. I can't hear myself think. Can't hear myself think. So that's the first one. I can't hear myself think. That's cool. I can't hear myself think. Like there's still tension being built, and then she goes cornball mode. I can't hear myself think. And then yeah, I can't hear myself think. All right, come on. Like you're overdoing it now. Luckily, I think that's the last time she says it. So then she just busts right into stop yelling at me! Yeah. So again, I'm like, I know I'm nitpicking, but hey, that's the point of this show. And so like first time I heard it, she was with me for the first two. Even the lyrics, I was like, all right, I've heard people, I can't hear myself think, so serious, right? But then I was still like, all right, yeah, fine. It's Linkin Park, they do stuff like this, but then it's like, I can't hear myself think. It's like, all right, come on. And then they bust into, stop yelling at me, and it's pretty heavy. So then with this stop yelling at me, actually, they do have a filter on her vocals. Unlike some of the others heavier parts that she's done, this actually is distorted in the mix, like with production. So let's hear that real quick. Stop yelling at me! So it's really over, like it sounds like it's just been like, it sounds almost over compressed. Like when you over compress something, it creates natural distortion just because you're bringing out every aspect. Like think about compression being, okay, sorry, back it up for people who don't know audio. Compression is essentially where you bring up the quiet parts and then you lower the louder parts. So like if I just talk into a microphone, you can probably, if you've ever streamed or if you've ever recorded, you'll see how like the volume goes up and down. That's really not good for something like a song because it sounds like you just recorded into a microphone. It doesn't sound like the professional audio that we've come to, familiarize ourselves with. So that's where you bring in compression, and that makes it so that there isn't a part that juts out like for being too loud or a part that is, too quiet to the point where you can't hear it. If they want a part to be quiet on a song, they can just lower the volume of the whole thing, but they don't want it to be, you want to do that intentionally. You don't want it to just be a bad recording, right? Or like bad audio quality. So compression basically squeezes the volumes together so that way like quiet parts are brought up so that they're clearly heard and loud parts are brought down so that they don't distract the listener and stick out. If you over compress something, like as in just smush it together, that means that even the small little like the breaths that you take or the small little inflections in one word, all of it gets brought up. Everything is squeezed so that it's the exact same volume. And when you over compress, that creates a natural distortion. So like even listen to me say a word like distortion, that word distortion. Naturally, I'm the tort part of distortion sounds louder and is more emphasized than the other parts. Distortion. Now, if imagine that like the dis or the end of the word. Let's use the end of the word for example, like distortion. That shun. I'm saying that very quietly, like not necessarily on purpose, but like you could even yell like distortion. But imagine if you brought that little, the N sound at the end of distortion up, like hyper compressed every aspect of that when it's not supposed to be that loud. Like you basically bring out parts of the speech that were not meant to be that loud, and that creates like a natural distortion in the vocals. So that's what it sounds like they did. They probably did, apply artificial distortion to the vocals as well, just a little bit. It does sound like it, but a lot of this sounds like they just really, like, you can get a really interesting sounding distorted effect just from over compressing. That's kind of what I wanted to say. But yeah, take a listen here. Stop yelling at me! Yeah, there's definitely like an added effect, like distortion effect there, but it sounds very what's the word, overdriven and then like choppy, and like it has this like dirtiness to it, which is really cool. So anyway, let's get into this breakdown. So think. Stop yelling at me! So we are going full throttle here. This is great. All right, so a couple things. We've mixed the two guitar riffs together. So remember we had this little dinky guitar riff? That's the riff that was playing during that softer bridge. We are now going to mix that guitar riff in with the rhythm that we've been talking about the whole song. So here, check it out. Oh yeah, okay. So we've taken that dum 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 dum, because that was not the rhythm of the main riff. Just for a reminder, here's the main riff. So that's the main riff. This is our new riff for the breakdown. So we've taken and we've mixed it in with this here. So we've mixed that. So we've added that little rhythmic quirk in with the breakdown riff, the down, 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 down. So that's just really cool. Again, that's a very, it's hard for me to describe this as a guitarist, because usually when you're looking at like guitar riffs and stuff, you think, okay, here's the riff. And then you're like, cool, I'm going to write another riff now. You don't usually think of riffs like this, where it's, we're going to take, this rhythm and apply change the riff, but still keep this rhythm. And then even when we make a new riff, we're going to actually add that rhythm into this new riff as well. Like it's a really creative way of thinking about the guitar. And actually what I want to say is it's a really musical songwriting first approach to writing guitar riffs. So rather than just showing off your ego by writing all these fancy guitar riffs, they're switching this rhythm for the benefit of the song so that they can keep that rhythmic quirk but keep things moving and changing. So yeah, it's very cool. I really like it, because this isn't how most guitarists approach songwriting. Most of the time it's, I write a riff, I think it's cool, and then I'm going to write another riff, and then another riff, and then you get like 4 or 5 riffs throughout the song, and that's your song. Where in this case, they've got this little rhythmic quirk, and they've written everything around that. So, cool stuff. The drum beat, as I, have learned, is the same as the chorus and the pre-chorus, which Linkin Park are kind of masters of doing that, honestly. Like using the same drums throughout like the heavy parts, but just by changing the guitars and the vocals and stuff, making it just sound so much more intense. So like, listen to the drums here. Stop yelling at me! It's the same drums as what's going on here. That's so cool. Like, again, like Linkin Park are just good at stuff like this, like making, you know, economical use of their writing. It's like, we don't need to change the drum beat. Like, that's the drum beat for this song. We don't need to write a whole bunch of new guitar parts. Like, there is a riff, we're going to use it. And that's that. So everything that they play, like, all of this kind of leads you to like think, oh yeah, I've heard this before. Like, this already sounds familiar, because it is. But just by changing a few things, that breakdown can just sound so much more intense and so much more like it sounds like you're hearing a whole new section, but then it also sounds familiar, and it's something that you can, like, your brain can latch onto because it's already heard it. At this point, you've already heard this drum beat. This is the fourth time you've heard this drum beat in the song, and we're only 2 minutes into the song. This is the, you know, every guitar riff in the song has had that little guitar quirk that's happening. They just changed it by adding a little bit of adding a slightly different first half of the riff. But even then, you've already heard the first half of the riff in the section right before this, when it was just the, right? So you all of it sounds familiar, but it's also like very fresh and new, and it's because they've switched things up. They just like changed some of the pieces to make it sound much heavier, and then obviously with Emily singing or screaming over it, you just get a whole new sound.
Stop yelling at me!
And now we get Mr. Han as well. Now he gets his time to shine. This is pretty classic, like, Johan. It is very much, this is a throwback. Like, I'll be straight up. This is like a throwback, and I think they knew that. And I think that this song was meant to be a throwback song to some extent, but it just sounds great. I said this on the episode with Aubrey, like, it's a winning formula, and Linkin Park do it great. So, like, it sounds intense. It sounds heavy. The song's been building to this. It's awesome. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's badass. So let's take another listen. Yeah. Awesome stuff. Let's talk real quick. Emily is saying, stop yelling at me. I can't hear myself think. Stop yelling at me. And then she just repeats, stop yelling at me. So I think that that's okay. I like, it's a breakdown. It's fine. I would prefer to think of, a song like Two-Faced. Usually people who are two-faced like that don't manipulate by yelling. In fact, they do the opposite. They manipulate by appealing to your reason and rationality. So I do think that's an interesting choice of lyric, but it's fine. It does the job. So I think that's all I'll say about that. Like, I'm not sure if it quite fits the theme of the song, but hey, like, again, I said at the beginning, I don't think that a lot of Linkin Park's lyrics are meant to be like hyper analyzed in this way. You're supposed to just, like, you're along for the ride to a certain extent. So all cool. The next thing I want to talk about is actually the structure of this section. So they actually play this riff 6 times. It's a repetition of 6, which is kind of interesting because it's similar to Heavy as the Crown, where they did 9 repetitions in order to really emphasize how long Emily was holding out that scream. So they do it 6 times, and they change the riff up right on the 6th. Listen for it here. I'll count out each time.
Stop yelling at
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My bad. Jeez, I am just off my shit today. Is it really 7? Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. got the tabs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It is 7 times. My bad. Jeez Louise, I can't catch a break. Making mistakes all over the place. No, it's 7 times, which is, again, that's cool. It kind of it keeps you on your toes. It throws you off. It's you know, let me just talk about this for a second. I've always been a little iffy with stuff like that. Especially if it doesn't serve a purpose. And I will say, I don't know if it serves a purpose here. The only purpose that I can think of is that the whole point of this song is to, the confusion that comes with people manipulating you. So maybe by making it 7 times, it sounds like it's meant to kind of throw you off and keep you on your toes. I could totally see that. Especially with the whole thing being like, stop yelling at me. It's crazy and chaotic. Maybe I should preface by saying this. They intentionally did it. And I know that I say that a lot, but I think it's just important to recognize, like, they know what they're doing. They did this on purpose. The normal bands would have done eight repetitions, but they did 7. And so it's a conscious decision that they make. And so there's got to be some reason of like, well, why did they make that decision? Was it going on for too long? Did they want it to be crazy and confusing and like switch it up? Like, I think that the more I say it, that kind of makes sense to me. Like, there's supposed to be some level of like emotional confusion when you're dealing with people like this, and maybe that's what they're trying to capture. Regardless, it's a decision they made, and I do think it works better here than it does in some other songs that I hear. So it's cool. But it is an interesting choice. I don't think I have too much else to say about that. It's just something to be aware of. Like, if it feels like that chorus comes in a little early, it's because it is. It's, kind of like what I said on Heavy is the Crown, where like, they do 9 measures. Our brain is used to groups of 4 in music. So when they do that 9th measure, it really draws it out. And it really, like, you have this moment of like, oh my God, she's still holding out the scream, versus here it actually sounds like the chorus comes in like a measure too early, which again, I don't think let me just put it like this. I don't think it really does anything for me. It's just something that they decided to do. It's kind of cool. It's going above and beyond. Not about it. I said this on the episode with Aubrey, but they were definitely really passionate about this album, and so they combed over it with like a fine-tooth comb to make sure every second was interesting. The whole album's fun to listen to, and that they were like at their peak, like creatively, and that they were doing things that they liked and that they enjoyed. So it just might have been as simple as that. They just thought it'd be cool to switch it up a little bit for this breakdown and keep the chaos, like keep it feeling chaotic. And so yeah. Anyway, coming into right before the last chorus, on the 7th time they do that, we have this little like filtered guitar sound. Right here. Or right here. That right there. It's pretty cool. Fun stuff. The drums actually do switch to like a blast beat riff for like 2 beats. I shouldn't say blast. Like, the snare is 100% on the one here. Listen. Yeah, right there on the 7th one, they go. And then we come back into the chorus, and then the final chorus is the same up until the very end when she starts repeating Caught in the Middle. She just repeats it. Instead of repeating it twice, she repeats it 5 times. Yeah, so that's cool. They're just repeating the riff over and over again behind her. It really hits the point home. And then when they finally do, like, it actually sounds like there's a lot of tension building there. I think she's actually raising her vocals. Hold on. Yeah, she starts screaming higher and higher and more intensely. and then we get that filtered guitar riff again over the chanted two-faced. Which again, that's a crowd pleaser moment. That's probably awesome live. That two-faced. And then we bust down into which riff is it? Is it the same? Is it the breakdown riff? I didn't think it was. Yeah, it's actually the intro riff from the beginning. So it's not the same as the breakdown riff. So here, listen. So yeah, back to the intro. That's the same riff that plays at the intro here. Pretty smooth transition. Cool. And so yeah, it's just I'm glad that they only played it twice. Again, don't overstay your welcome. It's a very concise song with a lot of energy, and they're just keeping that energy up. And so before, I feel like at this point we've heard that riff or some variation of that riff for 3 minutes straight now. So, you know, keeping it short at the end, just having that little breakdown with a little extra Mr. Han wicka wicka sounds here. Yeah, cool stuff. And then we end the song with some talking. Here.
Is that what it is?
That's what it is. We're on the same page right now.
So I think I've mentioned this on some other songs. I'm like iffy on stuff like that. I think you got to be really careful with it because it can be a little forced. Like for example, I think she laughs just a little too hard. I know I'm being really nitpicky with that, but it's kind of like with Katy Perry on Truth, where she's like saying, you know, where are you? I haven't heard from you. Where are you? It's like, I get that the point of something like that, like a little outro of talking, is meant to like connect you with the people a little bit more, but it can very quickly come off as like inauthentic. And that's something that you got to be careful of. So I will say, you know, it sounds like a funny little moment. They're rolling their R's. I can't roll my R's. So when they say like, is that what it is? They're like rolling on the that. And then he says, that's what it is. And, you know, it's a funny little thing that they're doing. I don't know if you caught that. But then they said, we're on the same page right now. Like, here, let me play one more time.
Is that what it is?
Oh yeah, she rolls her R's on what? Is that what it is?
What it is.
Yeah. And then they laugh about it. Not a little much, but then he says,
we're on the same page right now.
And that's fun. And actually, I did have a note here. I think what saves me is him saying we're on the same page right now. Even if it's not intended to relate to the song, it actually kind of fits with the theme of the song of like we're not being manipulated anymore, or like there's no more confusion. We're on the same page, which that works. I think that kind of saves it for me. So yeah. And honestly, having this little thing at the end does keep the song fun. Like it keeps it from being taken too seriously, because I don't think it's supposed to be. So I think here it's like, it's okay. It works fine. It doesn't, I don't feel like positive or negative about it. I do think she laughs a little too hard. Like it sounds like, let me put it this way. I don't think that these little sections here at the end should sound like they were faked, or that they had to like, okay, let's do like 4 or 5 takes of, you know, is that what it is? That's what it is. Ha! We're on the same page right now. It's like that should be like a genuine studio moment, not something that's like, and maybe it was. I'm just pointing out what I hear. So regardless, it keeps the song fun, and the last line, we're on the same page right now, actually does kind of fit with the theme. So yeah, that's it. We did it. We made it through another one. Holy shit. Almost 2 hours talking about this song. I didn't think it would take that long. But there was a lot to say. So yeah, going through my little songwriting checklist, like the purpose of this song to me was for them to create another throwback song, kind of like Heavy as the Crown, like the throwback to the what most people consider to be like the typical Linkin Park formula. but I think where Heavy as the Crown was meant to be a bit more serious and a very like I would use the word epic song. This was meant to be more fun and energetic and heavy. This definitely falls a little more into like new metal than rap rock or something. This is like very much gives off like that 90s new metal vibe to me. Song structure wise, it's pretty basic. You know, just verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, breakdown, chorus, outro. Like nothing too insane. Compositionally though, I think this is a masterclass in taking in like keep it simple stupid, like taking one little riff and expounding upon it, and you can actually like use that to create an entire song that has lots of energy and it's just interesting. Like it's cool. It's a cool song and a cool way to write a song, to just have this one little thing, which is that da, 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 and to keep it going throughout. So yeah, I really like that. Everything really kind of follows along with that, but it all works really well. Mike's rapping is, you know, it complements it rather than follows it, which gives a lot of cool like rhythmic variations, especially during the pre-chorus when he says like, your truth's not rigid, your rules aren't fair. Like that just really makes you want to bob your head and like get you moving. But then Emily will follow along with the riff during the chorus. Two-faced, caught in the middle, you know, like that's cool too. Like, so there's just a lot of cool stuff happening here. But it all follows that one theme or motif. That, by the way, that's what a motif is, just so y'all know. A motif is like a little musical thing that is done throughout a piece. So like, I'm trying to think like most riffs are motifs because you would play the riff throughout the song. A melody is a motif. Could be considered a motif. Like if Taylor Swift starts a song off with the melody that is going to be in the chorus, and she brings that melody back in other ways with different lyrics, that melody would be the motif. It's like a little mini theme almost. Mix wise, nothing too crazy to say. It's a really good mix. Like everything sounds great. It's very intense. Lots of cool stuff done with like the drums and the vocals to emphasize things. And I do want to point out again that little pre-chorus guitar part, which I think sounds super cool. I haven't heard many things like that. I'm specifically talking about this right here. That is the wrong song. My bad. It went to the next song. This part right here. Like the mix there is great. It just sounds so cool, and the tension is building. A lot of energy there. Lyrically, yeah, the song is just about the confusion that comes with dealing with people who manipulate. I do think that the breakdown lyrics don't quite fit, but that's okay. Like it's nothing. It's not a deal killer at all. And that's the theme as well. Like there are going to be people who confuse you, and the song is about exposing those people and pointing out their two-facedness. So yeah, overall, pretty solid song. It's not like groundbreaking by any stretch, but it's a lot of fun, very energetic. You know, it slaps. This song just slaps. So cool. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this. Like I said, we're going to be doing a couple Linkin Park episodes just because we're in November now. I don't think there's a whole lot of new music coming out at this time of the year. So this is like the big album. Like this might be the last like significant album that comes out this year. But we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if there's any other albums on Aubrey's radar. Maybe that's something I'll talk to him about. But yeah, but also we're not just going to do it because it's the only album to talk about. There's a lot of really good songs on here. You know, we're definitely going to do an episode for Overflow. We'll probably do an episode on Casualty. You know, I think Casualty is a little bit of a divisive one. I know some people who really like that song. I personally think it was a little underwhelming, but I will say it is starting to grow on me after listening to it for a few days. And then Overflow, though, I think is definitely one we have to talk about. I think it's like the sleeper hit of the album. It's just a great song. It's very, very, very interesting. I haven't heard a whole lot of songs like that, so we'll definitely be talking about that one. So yeah, cool. Well, hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, stay tuned for some more. So yeah, have a great, thank you for listening. Be sure to like and follow, subscribe, all that, fun stuff that everyone always has to say. And yeah, peace out. Wale.